And we're back. Hey guys, it's been a few weeks. We apologize for the delay. We were in Chicago, Illinois, doing some work for a couple clients, visiting some friends out there. But we're back to you, the people we care about, not the most, but you're up there. You're one of our top, there's a lot of people, but you're right up there. We've seen a couple movies here in the last few weeks. We want to bring them up to you. It's been a little while since one of them came out, so we're just being a little bit different here. Today's video is on Pet Sematary, but normally we don't do a lot of spoilers. This won't be too spoiler intensive, but it's a remake of a fucking adaptation here, so they haven't really changed that much. I'm gonna get into not whether or not it's a good movie, but why it's such a bad movie. And at the end of this, we got a few announcements for you, so you go ahead and don't touch that computer dial. I don't know. If you're on an Apple TV, then it's worked.
I don't know what to say.
So Pet Sematary can best be summarized by the irony that it's a film whose tagline is "Some things are better left dead," that was resurrected for yet another adaptation. It's a decent film for the first couple of acts. John Lithgow's fantastic. I'd say if there's anything that this movie improves upon over the last couple iterations, it's probably the acting. In the original, I think the only thing that really stands out to me is the good old Fred Gwynne from The Munsters and My Cousin Vinny and so many other things. John Lithgow is, of course, a great actor. It's really hard to compete with him. But really, in this case, the entire family is full of great actors. I think even the kids are pretty decent. And again, I'm well on record with how much I hate child actors. This film, however, didn't work for me. It wasn't very good. And it's really frustrating to me because, as I've said before, it's really tough when a movie kind of has a really good first half and just really underwhelms. I would say this, ranking the Pet Sematary films, you got to go with the original.
Don't deny the thought hadn't crossed your mind.
Then maybe this one.
But they don't come back the same.
Then the second.
I didn't think much about it until I saw him drag the body out of the coffin.
But if you want to see the best adaptation, probably just watch the trailer for this one, because it's the entire movie. It's pretty much all you need to see in about 2.5 minutes. You know exactly who dies, how they die, when they die, all the best lines. It's all right there. It's a masterclass in how not to bring people to your film if you want them to enjoy the experience and be even slightly surprised. Now, people who have seen the original are really trying to compare it, and I kind of fell into that trap a moment ago. I think that this film really wants to be compared. At the same time, though, it really does a few things differently to try to stand in its own right. Those changes, though, I find really weren't that substantial. And the original, it's the little boy who dies. And this one, you know, it's the girl, as you again saw in the trailer. And aside from that, the only thing that's really different is the ending. And without spoiling what that ending is, it's the kind of thing where, for me, it really pays off well if it's a shorter movie and you're trying to have like a little gothic story, a little gothic tale, a little Grimm's fairy tale circa 2019. But for a Pet Sematary and for a 2-hour investment, it's a film that unfortunately is so front-loaded with so much great build-up and so much great kind of world building and all the subplots they're trying to fit in. If you've seen the original, you know, you've got the flashbacks with the mother and her sister, you've got the father at the new school, all these things kind of happening, the relationship between John Lithgow, the older neighbor, and the kids. You know, all these kind of interesting stories and subplots in the first half are building, and then it's just a quick descent into zombie fighting and idiotic character decisions. You know, I'm editing this together right now, and just one more thing that's really bothering me. The original ending of this movie, as a side note, it synthesizes everything about the main character, his motivations, and the idiocy of his decision-making. And it pays off in a final event that is the aggregate of his inability to learn from his mistakes. What's the phrase? Has a fucking point. And this film, while the ending is different, and yeah, like everything that I said, I do agree with, but I feel like maybe I'm not really touching home here on why this bothered me so much. The new ending, the whole purpose of it really is just somebody fighting a monster and whether or not you can defeat the evil and how dark we can make the ending. And for a movie like The Mist, which has one of the most horribly dark endings in a Stephen King film, that worked. It worked because it, again, told something about the characters involved, about the humanity of their situation. You learned something from that. You got something from that. And this movie, the sin committed by the protagonist is just burying the daughter. What made the original film so dark is he commits the sin, he has the chance to learn, and he's so desperate, he refuses to learn. In this, there's just a fucking zombie that's evil. Fucking evil little child. This is what I think the film was written by. Also, I think before I misspoke and did not get the tagline of this film right, I was watching it back and I think I said something to the effect of like, you should leave the thing dead or whatever. I do in fact know that the tagline is sometimes dead is better. So that was the irony I was trying to point out earlier, is that sometimes dead is better and sometimes a franchise does not need to be rebooted. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the review. If anything, I'd say one of the weirdest things about this movie is I would compare it more to the most recent It adaptation than I would to the 80s Pet Sematary film. Mostly because some of the visual styles kind of feel similar. The way they get into some of those flashbacks with the mother feels very out of It. The difference is It was a much better film. It was a fantastic kind of ride that handled a lot of material in a really kind of condensed and tight story that was well paced. This just kind of feels like eventually a movie that's all over the place. And unfortunately, it's a movie that's really built around what happens in this cemetery, what happens when things do come back and were they better off dead. And while it takes 2/3 of the film to get there, it really doesn't give a lot of room for any of the characters to breathe after the Kingian supernatural elements come into play. So what you kind of get is just this weird, bland, kind of two-dimensional ending that really disserves all of the characters involved. I mean, they're kind of set up to be interesting and three-dimensional, and then you kind of have these lackadaisical and lazy ways of summarizing or tying off those character threads that I just thought were just really unfortunate. By the end, I mean, how bad things get, not just in terms of how bad quality-wise, but how bad from like a darkness and happiness standpoint, it almost becomes kind of comical. So obviously, I did not enjoy this film very much, but let's get into, again, why didn't Pet Sematary 2019 work? These stories, and Stephen King especially, and when he talks about where he was in his life and where he gets these ideas from, there is a lot of truth in the darkness of these stories, and that's what makes a really good horror story, as I've said before, is it pulls out some ethereal aspect of our fear in life, existential fear sometimes. And when Stephen King talks about Pet Sematary, it's when he was off at a new college teaching, and he was near a road where animals kept getting run over, and he wondered what would happen if his kid got run over. And fueled by that idea and a lot of cocaine, he wrote this story, exploring what would happen and kind of the darkness behind that. And the original film, while campy in some ways, and while definitely dated in some ways, it captures that idea really well. Much like The Shining captures the concept of what he's going for, even if it doesn't really capture the mannerisms and the characterizations of the original story. The new Pet Sematary, it's kind of a paint by numbers. I mean, you're bringing up character elements and you're expositing character experiences, but they don't resonate. Those punches don't land. It just feels like, somebody's going out there and giving you a hell of a performance, but without that real tug on the heartstring, without that real characterization, without that grounding. It just feels kind of vapid and like an experiment and meaningless. It's a story of sound and fury signifying nothing, told by a moron. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't really say I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the first half of it. I enjoyed the soundtrack. I thought the acting was actually really good in this. But it was a really sad, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but to me at least it resonates. There was a really weird period in the early 2000s where horror movies were being made, and especially Stephen King movies were being adapted, where you just kind of saw like these lazy tropes and lazy archetypes, and you could kind of feel the same beats to all these movies, where it just felt like somebody took a template, kind of copied it and pasted it over, and you knew which characters were irrelevant, what kind of archetypes would be used, what aspects of the plot were meaningless, and what obvious things were going to come back later. And in a really bad way, this movie reminded me of those things. And so I guess, I don't know, what's a better way to end my time here? I guess top 5 Stephen King films for you to watch that aren't Pet Sematary. Go! I'm going to go, I love The Shining. I love me some 1408. I love the remake of The Mist. The ending's pretty dark. I enjoy it. Let me tell you what, if you're somebody out there who loves Stephen King and Emilio Estevez, pretty niche crowd, not saying I know people like this, and you haven't seen Maximum Overdrive, come on, go see Maximum Overdrive. And last but not least, you want to round it out pretty nice, want to keep it kind of crazy, I say go Creepshow 1. What you don't do is see Pet Sematary 3, 2019. Some things are better left dead. I don't really have a pun for this. I think I used my best joke earlier. Oh, one last thing. I said I'd have some announcements. I forgot those real quick. So next month, we're approaching our 6-month anniversary here as a YouTube channel. We have an interesting project we're working on that we will be releasing that's a bit different. It's not a review. It's something kind of standalone that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. And then at the end of the summer, we're going to begin releasing a new documentary series about a band here in the Tucson area that has been working on a brand new rock and roll album. And so for anybody out there who likes music, who enjoys a little tale of small town boys trying to make good, well, this might just be for you. We'll have more information about that coming up shortly. But right now, it's the end of April, and we just want to say thank you guys very much as we approach 200 subscribers. And we're very excited as we move forward here into the summer. So I think that click track means I'm being played off. Now I'll see you guys later.